Hey there. Just before this episode's discussion about aliens, something I thought you might want to know. Literally a couple of hours after we recorded it, some news came through via a video I caught from Alien Theory, the YouTube channel, about a brand new documentary about the film Aliens, which is looking for contributions from Aliens fans. So I thought it would be important to include that in this episode. If you want more information, please go and look at the Alien Theory video. There will be a link in the show notes. This is a fairly standard spoilerific discussion of the film Aliens, but be warned, towards the end things are going to take a turn for the strange as myself and Ian are interrupted by a child. Be prepared.
Now the podcast starts.
Hello, dear listener, and welcome to the podcast where we talk about horror. Sometimes we talk about other things, and sometimes we swear. This week, I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by the wonderful Ian Winterton. Say hello, Ian.
Hello, Ian. I did it.
I'm glad I didn't.
Joke.
I didn't let your joke down by missing the cue this week.
No.
And I am TD Velasquez, but dear listener, as always, you can call me Dan. Now, last week on the podcast, I say last week, when you could be listening to this in 3 years, last episode, we talked about the generic qualities of 3 movies, different in different subgenres with some relation to horror. We talked about the Poseidon Adventure, we talked about Jaws, and we talked about Aliens. And it was discussing Aliens that, but following the discussion, I just had further thoughts. And knowing Ian as I do, I thought we could probably both say a lot more about that movie in particular. Would you say that's fair, Ian?
I would say so, yeah. It's action, or is it sci-fi?
Well, we'll find out. Before we get into the main discussion, how are you, Ian?
I'm good, thanks. I've recorded another podcast today for Cutaway Comics, which will be out in a few months once we've recorded a lot of.
Does that podcast? Does it have a title? That podcast? It's not just called Doctor Who, I assume.
No, it's sponsored by Cutaway Comics that I write for and edit for, and we're so obviously most of that is Doctor Who related. So this is the idea of this is it's a sort of Desert Island Discs, but we didn't want to we were going to call it Desert Island Who, and then we thought we're just going to get asked to take that down by the BBC. So we have gone for the Bunker or the Cutaway Bunker, but the idea is I was watching Threads, as is my wont, to cheer myself up, as a distraction from the Tory leadership race.
Oh no! Let's not talk about that.
No,
online.
Horror adjacent.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, and there's that brilliantly bleak scene in Threads where they're watching the VHS of Words and Pictures. If you remember that. And so I just thought, yeah, so it's going to be, I guess you're going to be in a post-apocalyptic bunker, trapped alone while the radiation.
I actually
only got 5 news stories.
I'd forgotten the scene with Words and Pictures. Is it when the government of Sheffield have retreated to their underground bunker and they're watching tapes?
Well, it's in the latter part of the film when it's very post-apocalyptic. It's like 10 years later when Ruth's daughter is an adult or a young woman, just before she gets raped in the barn because it's such a cheerful.
Oh, gee, yeah.
So I remember that because I'm older than you, because I remember watching Words and Pictures as a child. So the fact that they were watching it on a crackly VHS really got me when I watched it as a kid, and still does.
I'm surprised that late in the movie, which is about a nuclear apocalypse for any listeners who aren't familiar with the brilliant movie Threads, I'm surprised that 10 years after the blast that they still had any electricity with which to power a video cassette. I remember scenes where there are people watching a TV, but it's just a television set that they've lit a fire inside and the light is kind of flickering out of the screen. But I don't remember.
That's in the... Yeah, I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure it's late on, and everyone's sort of in the survivors phase of it, which doesn't spend a lot of time in that area. It's like 13 years after the bomb. Yeah, and then Ruth just drops dead. Spoilers. Anyway, why are we talking about Threads?
Yeah, well, you're just noting your podcast. So the idea is that people will, a bit like Desert Island Discs, but people will choose the favourite Doctor Who stories that they take on a desert island or to a bunker with them.
Yeah, but in this case, they're locked in a bunker with only a TV and a DVD player.
Right.
Although we're not limiting it to TV Doctor Who, it's any iteration of Doctor Who. And the guy I was interviewing today is actually a blind Doctor Who fan and activist. So it was amazing seeing hearing about how Doctor Who is very much about the Eighth Doctor for him.
Okay.
And as well as audiobooks and and the amount of things he hasn't listened to because there isn't decent audio description on BritBox and all these sort of things.
Right.
So, but we'll be releasing that in a couple of months, I think.
That's fantastic.
Once we've got enough of them recorded and up and running.
That's great. Well, when that comes around, I shall make sure that we have links in what episodes we're posting then, so that people can find the podcast. That's very exciting, and I look forward to hearing that myself. So is there anything else you'd like to mention before we start talking about aliens?
No, I think I'm okay. I've been finally getting into Paramount Plus.
Oh yes, you've got that, haven't you? I've not got Paramount Plus.
Watching the new Star Trek, which is quite brilliant.
So I hear.
Which is not really very horror adjacent. That's very sci-fi. And I'm also getting into more sci-fi. I'm watching For All Mankind on Apple, which is back to being as brilliant as season 1 for my money.
Yes, I remember it was one of your recommendations last year.
Yeah. No, I do like it. I do like a bit of sort of alternative history, the what ifs, and it's definitely in a better universe.
Right. The one that we inhabit.
Although,
excuse me,
the Soviet Union's still going, so it swings and roundabouts. But so we could talk for far too long.
Sure. Yeah.
About the ins and outs of of For All Mankind.
Well, indeed.
Are you finding time to watch anything at the moment? Are you busy?
At the moment, I'm for the first time watching The West Wing because I find it comforting and.
See, it's so much more of a fantasy as each year goes by.
It's comforting to watch a story of a functional, competent government, but also I couldn't, even though I have friends who are huge fans of it and I've never seen it, I couldn't really watch it while Donald Trump was in office. It would just be too painful. I mean, I don't get the impression that the government in America is that great right now, but at least they're not Trump. And it seems a little bit more compatible with the kind of worldview in the West Wing, and it's not dated too badly. The political mechanisms and problems have probably not changed much in 20 years. So, there was I watched an episode the other day where there was a school shooting and an ensuing gun control debate, which has been very much in the news in just the last few weeks. So so much doesn't change. So,
well, I mean, I think that's half of America's problem is it's ossified and it's fused into these two sides, and nothing's changed since hardly anything's changed since the late 60s.
Yeah, it does seem like that a little bit. So yeah, that's what I'm watching, and based on our last episode, I did rewatch Jaws, which is still wonderful. I watched it with my mum the other night. Amazing. It's the first time I've watched it not on VHS. I watched it streamed in high def. So it's amazing how a lot of the dialogue I could suddenly understand what people were saying. And in a number of cases, they were saying something completely different to what I thought they'd said when I'd seen it before. But what a wonderful movie. There's a few movies that I will watch and immediately just want to watch them again, and they are all directed by Steven Spielberg. So that guy's got something. Jaws, Duel, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Jurassic Park are all movies that I will watch and immediately want to rewind.
I mean, well, to sort of segue into our topic, I'd say James Cameron was mostly in a similar camp. Like, if one of his movies, like Spielberg, if one of his movies is on TV, wherever it's at, I'll watch it to the end. And I'm like that, with Titanic whether it's Titanic or Terminator or just about any movie he's ever made, with the possible exception of Avatar. I will sit down. I will find myself drawn in because his storytelling is so crisp and amazing. And he just, him and Spielberg make perfect Hollywood movies. They're not the only way to make a film, but they do make perfect films.
They do, although Spielberg makes a lot of other movies in between, whereas Cameron just doesn't. He just sits there for 7 years thinking about the next one. So their hit rate is similar, even though Spielberg's made about 4 times as many films, I think. That is a really good segue, Ian. Let's take it. Okay, so we're going back to 1986, and the unexpectedly, long awaited, but unexpectedly powerful release of a sequel to Ridley Scott's classic Alien, that was made by almost none of the people who were involved with Alien, and yet became a smash hit and a classic movie. You and I and Kirsty have talked about Alien 3 on this podcast in the past. I'm sure we'll talk about the other Alien films, but at this point today we're going to talk about the second film in the series, Aliens. And for listeners who heard the previous episode, we normally do include the audio from a trailer of the film that we're going to discuss. So last week we already did that for Aliens. We used the main theatrical trailer, but this week we're going to use a different trailer, which is the kind of few weeks into the theatrical run, pumped up, we're brilliant, everybody says we're brilliant, go and see this film if you haven't already trailer, which is my favourite trailer for the movie. So that's what I thought we'd include. Let's have a listen to this.
And I haven't watched this before, so...
Indeed. So, Ian, have at it.
Audiences and critics agree. Aliens is the wild roller coaster ride moviegoers have been waiting for all summer.
That's right outside the door.
The best action film of the year. Unbelievably exciting. Sheer exhilaration. Fasten your seatbelts for the ultimate summer action film. Aliens will blow you through the back wall of the theater. Sigourney Weaver. Aliens. Now playing everywhere.
So that was good of you to share that link. Basically said Ian's right.
I think some of the quotes are really great. I remember I played that to Ross and he said, "Oh, that's confident."
Yeah.
It's full of pomp, and that's what I love about it.
Well, I mean, it's it's weird as well because we just kind of accepted Aliens. I always wonder what people who were like fans of Alien, and then they heard there was a sequel coming, and then they got this shit.
Yeah, and there are such people, definitely,
who are like, what a travesty! Like, how dare they make it? Basically, it sounds like, if you didn't know what you were watching, it's like, well, it's like, and you couldn't see, if you couldn't see the picture, you'd think, oh, is this kind of a bit like Die Hard?
Yeah.
Are we watching this year's Die Hard?
Yeah. Well, the trailer doesn't make any attempt at all to suggest it's A, that it's a sequel to Alien, and B, that it's in any way frightening or horror film. The other trailer just calls
we'll scratch that because Die Hard came out after this, obviously.
Yes, but they might have thought Commando and to be honest, James Horner, who did the music for Aliens, most of his previous track record had been in those action movies. He did the music for 48 Hours and Commando and things like that. And
I mean, it's a bit like when did the summer action movie become a thing?
I think it would have been early 80s.
I mean, Top Gun, I guess, was
86 as well. Yeah.
So I'm just going through them now, and they're it's almost like before Commando was the year before.
Yeah.
And then it was like Bond movies and things.
Yeah.
So
and Aliens was made by a lot of the Bond crew. I've been revisiting the Bond films every week as they've been re-released in cinemas this year for the 60th anniversary, and that door sound effect from Aliens that all the doors in the colony make, that was being used in the Bond films in like 1965. So it's all the same sound editors, the same ADs, the same production designer, which separates it from Alien as well, which was more a kind of almost, even though Ridley Scott was a fairly new director, it was a kind of 2001: A Space Odyssey kind of prestige sci-fi. We could shoot this movie in a few weeks with very little money, Roger Corman style, but actually we're going to lavish time and energy and creativity on it. But Aliens was more like bish bash bosh, let's get it thrown together by people who know exactly what they were doing. And apparently it was a really fraught shoot, because even though the crew knew exactly what they were doing, they didn't know exactly enough for Cameron, who was like, who are these English guys who want their tea breaks? The making of documentary is fascinating because of all the political strife among the cast and crew. But the people who put it together were experts in their field, and I mean, I could talk about the movie from many angles, obviously from production clearly, but I think as a starting point for this discussion, I'd like to go back to what we were talking about in our last episode, which was the kind of generic placing of the movie, and we kind of agreed that it's more of an action film than a horror film. But you said something really interesting. You said that I think Alien is a horror film. I find it frightening, but I just don't find Aliens frightening for some reason, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because it doesn't set itself up as an action. It doesn't set itself up as a horror movie. It kind of places itself as an action film, and this made me think of my time in therapy. Basically, some listeners may recognise this. So if you've been in therapy for anxiety, something that you are kind of encouraged to do is when you feel anxious, tell yourself it's not anxiety, it's excitement. You're thrilled to be doing something, because the feeling of excitement and the feeling of fear basically are physiologically the same, and it's about the attitude that you come to them with that makes the difference. So so in a way there is a difference in attitude in Aliens, but I think that of all the films I've seen, and please tell me if anybody knows something that they can say is more exciting, but I think Aliens is the most exciting film I've ever seen. I think it's more exciting than Die Hard. And I think the reason, and I love Die Hard, and I think the reason why it's more exciting is because it's frightening as well. That's like the energy of it. But it's an enjoyable kind of fear, or at least for me, that you don't come out of it being disturbed. Having said that, it has disturbed people. I remember reading Roger Ebert's review of it, where he said basically, this film is absolutely brilliant, but I cannot recommend it. It is too traumatic. I didn't enjoy it. I felt assaulted by it. And
it's strange. You'd think from that description, you'd think he'd watched, like, I don't know, an Eli Roth film or something, or something where you are like, oh Christ, the violence is gratuitous. I mean, this is. But I'd say my reaction to it is pretty much the same, in that it's so thrilling to watch. Absolutely, just never get bored of it. It's a war film, where you don't have the horrible, you don't have the sort of horrible post-colonial guilt of, oh, we shouldn't really be watching this because they're people. You can't. We can watch Marines shooting aliens with the same way as people 40 years ago could watch cowboys shooting Indians. Sure. We can't, because we're not utter bastards anymore. But so you have that, or you can't watch Zulu in the same way as maybe a lot of people when it was made watched it.
I'm think this is
even though part of me really likes Zulu, I still find it troubling. But I don't find them shooting made up things, and it still has a sort of anti-capitalist message in this big, massive, multi-million-pound capitalist machine.
Yeah,
that made the movie.
No, before we move on from Zulu, I just want to pick you up on that, because it is something I'm thinking of quite a lot. I kind of want to write about Zulu because I think it's such a well-made film, and I think politically it's very modern. The only thing that when I watched it most recently, I saw it on a screening in Manchester, and I thought, they framed the Zulus as these obedient soldiers that kind of behave like ants. The general says, run the guns, and I'll count the guns by basically by virtue of how many of you die. And the soldiers just do that. If they didn't really in real life act like that, then the culture is being misrepresented and it's racist. But if they did really do that, then it's just a historical film. I don't think that movie has a kind of cowboys and Indians attitude where you're meant to cheer the fact that the white men are killing the black men. I think that it's like a survival movie, and ultimately,
I don't think most cowboy films even are that straight. I mean, are that straightforwardly.
No, that's true.
It's more like the sort of video game element of it. It doesn't matter who the enemy are, because you just wipe them out. So it is just a survival thing, which is very basic. The baddies are coming and we're all stuck in a room. Yeah, that's a very basic sort of thrilling, circle the wagons type. Type thing.
Classic potboiler stuff.
Being under siege is a sort of is a very simple people used to tell tales of, it was all whether it was the Alamo or even further back, I don't know, like Valletta in Malta with the Templars, or whatever all these a few men holding out against a nameless, faceless horde.
It was always made for a great story.
Yeah, and the nameless, faceless horde are always, depending who you are always the other.
Yeah.
Whether they're Persians and you're Spartans, or whether they're Indians and you're 7th Cavalry or whatever.
And to your point, and bringing it back to Aliens, they've got the perfect universal other because they have this horrendous non-humanoid horde of insectoid creatures. And Cameron did say at one point that one of his aims with Aliens, even if it was subconscious, was to make the best monster movie ever made. And I think that he has got the best horde of creatures that you could ever want for, really. And it's hard to imagine another movie trying to do that and coming up with a better foe.
Well, the xenomorph is such a great invention. It's up there with the Triffids or something for being a completely made up alien, well, not alien in the case of the Triffid, made up monster that has its own rules, and they stem from logic, and you know what a Dalek is, you know what a Triffid is, you know what a xenomorph is, and they're just such a good with their life cycle and their acid for blood and their, and you kind of, I think one of the best things about Aliens as well is it never cheats how tough they are. Like, they don't suddenly become easier to kill because there's lots of them. It's because the Marines have got really good guns. As soon as they don't, they ripped apart as quickly as the people in
That's
the
true.
Alien movie.
That's a very good point, because a lot of people do criticize Aliens for making the aliens too disposable. But the people in Alien only had like makeshift flamethrowers. These guys are professional soldiers, and also it's 70 years later in chronology, so they've got improved technology, one presumes. And the point is really well made that once the guns have run out of bullets or whatever, then the humans are completely vulnerable. You could not survive being in a room with one of these things,
no,
if you didn't have weapons. That is just fantastically done. And that's one of the reasons why I love the backstory of Aliens, that this colony has been overwhelmed by these things, because they weren't soldiers and they did have to try to defend themselves with what came to hand. There are lines of dialogue where the Marines find the remains of earlier battles, and it's like they tried to build barricades here. They used seismic survey charges to attack the aliens, which are not weapons, and they were obviously completely overwhelmed. And in just a few kind of lines of dialogue, really, and implications, it's such a nightmarish image is painted of what happened to the colony. Which is, as a sidebar, you've listened to Dirk Maggs's audios, haven't you? Yes, I love them.
Which the Tim Leben especially, which is exactly that, isn't it? It's the colony getting overwhelmed.
That's not the Tim Leben one. That's Alien.
Oh, is it not?
That's River of Pain, which is written by Christopher Golden, and it is very good. But it did slightly disappoint me because it does retcon slightly that there were Marines on the colony. And the story is kind of more concerned with the Marines, and all that stuff is great because it kind of recreates moments from Aliens, and the atmosphere of Aliens kind of perfectly.
I forgave it. I mean, they obviously just didn't go in the room with those Marines, but it means people stay alive a little bit longer.
and it would have been a very like you said, like an Eli Roth kind of a very bleak lack of survival movie, because nobody makes it out of there. That's the whole point. Whereas with the addition of the Marine unit, they were able to do some unexpected and surprising things, and it sounds like the same place. The young actress in it who plays Newt sounds exactly like Newt from the movie, even though it's obviously not the same actress. And it's just beautifully done. I think you and I are on the same page of saying that the Dirk Maggs audio dramas, which are all available on Audible, if you remember, they are the best Alien content apart from the first two movies. Maybe some of the comic books. And
they certainly knock Prometheus and Covenant into a.
They certainly do. We can get into that I have
But thankfully, we don't have to talk about androids playing flutes or any of that shit today.
we do not, but the time may come. The time may come.
Yeah.
But sticking with...
You never know, I might rewatch both those films and go, I was wrong. I completely missed. But I must not. I'm going to start going on a rant if I start thinking about...
Now, again, people... I'm not a fan of them, but people do love those movies very much, so I've tried very hard to look at them.
It's clear. I had one of my students, and I was encouraging all my students to like watch lots of movies, and and she said, I've never watched Alien or Aliens, and she went away and watched them all, and she said, what's your favourite one of them then? And I went, oh, well, probably Alien or Aliens, and then the rest of them were a bit rubbish. She went, what? And her favourite of all of them after watching them all was Covenant.
Right.
Because she had no preconception. She had no like, this is right, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, these are classics. She really hadn't really heard of them. And then she watched them all in a few days, and Covenant was obviously the best because it was really well made and had lots of cool stuff going on in it, and she didn't feel cheated out of the fact it's not aliens and any of those sort of things.
I know people who love it, and I had a close friend who came up to me shortly after Covenant it came out when I hadn't seen it, but I read the book, which was a conscious choice. And he knowing that I'm a huge fan of Aliens, he said, Dan, I think you should watch Alien Covenant. I think you'd really like it. And I thought, you don't know me at all, do you? It's been 15 odd years. But nevertheless, I do strive to look at these movies even-handedly because there's something coming up. I'm working on a project that listeners to this podcast will hopefully be able to hear and see later in the year. Because this year is, of course, the 10th anniversary of Prometheus. So, God heavens. It is. So, 10 years last month it came out. So,
well, thankfully, we haven't had a third.
I'm sure you would have had it not been for the dissolution of 20th Century Fox and the merger with Disney. I'm sure that just the political tectonic plate shifting is what prevented Ridley Scott from being able to mobilise his forces on that.
Thankfully.
Thanks. But I will never, I'll never completely write it off. Not before Ridley has passed away. And I don't want to say anything really horrible. So let's get back to Aliens. So I just want to mention as well, I talked before about kind of revisiting all the Bond films. It's probably, I suddenly realised when thinking about this, it probably makes a lot of sense that the Aliens is one of my very favourite films because I love the Bond films. I grew up watching them all the time. So it's like a grounding in action, and like I said, there's that continuity with Aliens as a production as well. But also, one of my sisters is a serious feminist, and she was always saying to me when she'd find me watching Bond films, "What are you watching this sexist crap for? Just stop it." So suddenly it makes complete sense that my favourite movie is an action movie with a female lead. I just kind of slightly look to the left. It unfortunately is no comfort to my sister because she doesn't like violent movies and she doesn't like science fiction. But but nobody dislikes Sigourney Weaver. So
no, I mean it's. I think Sigourney Weaver is obviously she's amazing, but I think she also does Cameron a favour in that a lot of the criticism of the more purist people is we had people who were just surnames and their gender didn't matter in Alien. That's one of the groundbreaking things about Ridley Scott's original. Was he cast, when they lost their lead, he cast a woman. It didn't matter. They're just surnames. And then obviously one of the main things Cameron did was go, well, she's a woman. She's got a kid, and made the underlying theme motherhood. Which you could go, oh God, is that the best you could do because you had a female lead? Make it about motherhood. It works so well and so perfectly. That's literally a niggle.
Yeah. Well,
A niggle. And I can understand why you could say, oh, could you not have come up with anything else? But at the same time, yes, it works. And it's fine and it's brilliant. And it works amazingly well because you're gonna up the stakes and find out where aliens come from and who lays the eggs.
Yeah.
And all these things. So I can totally see why you'd go, it's fine. She's going to be a kick-ass person who happens to have had a child.
Yeah, and
at the time, it was seen as a bit reductive.
Yeah, and I can understand that reading, but I'd say it's emblematic of the film that it doesn't just do that; it goes all the way with it. We're not just going to make her a mother; we're going to make the film about motherhood. We're going to make the main villain the alien queen. It's about her eggs and things like that. In the same way that, some of it is a bit mechanical. I remember watching it with some friends once. I've seen this film loads of times, obviously, over my life. And the bit where... I
don't think I've seen another film more than this.
Well,
maybe Life of Brian.
That might ring true for me too. That's a good choice too. But, I remember I was watching it with friends, and, the scene where she tries out the power loader in the Sulaco. She wants to help out with the unloading, so she says, "Is there anything I can do?" And Apone says, "I don't know. Is there anything you can do?" And one of my friends called out, "I can foreshadow the plot." And it's like, she goes, "I can drive that loader," which of course sets up the whole ending of the film. And it is kind of clunky foreshadowing, but I love the fact that that scene doesn't just do that. It's establishing Ripley's, in a slightly clunky way, Ripley's toughness, the fact that she stands up to these guys and impresses them. It's doing both of those things at once, and both of them are only a bit clunky. It's not really bad, and in most aspects, it's doing several things at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's only. I think it's. Cameron, I can see why he was hired to write this because of Terminator. Yeah. He wrote Terminator so quickly and it was so successful, and that he can really write a script. I teach screenwriting, and I use Cameron's whenever we get to the how do you write action, because that's often a bit that really trips people up. Right. See, even now in the 21st century, even though the kids I'm teaching don't go to the theatre, they still think of plays. They still think a script is dialogue. Right. And so you have people talking far too much in most people's scripts when they're getting going. So it's just brilliant to show a Cameron script, which is, here's what's happening. Do you need dialogue? No, you don't.
Yeah.
And people saying idiotic things like, well, is Arnold Schwarzenegger an actor because he hasn't got very much dialogue, as though that's the only thing that makes you an actor. They said that about Pierce Brosnan as well, didn't they? Like he had 20 lines or something. As though the only thing an actor is the person who says the lines, what the writer does right.
And as someone who has acted, in various medium, you can act on stage and you can act on audio, but you don't realise until you're in front of the camera how important movement is. I remember when I was in a film and I'd just listened to a documentary, again about Bond on the radio, and they dug up a quote from one of the producers who said that one of the reasons they cast Sean Connery was because he moved so well. Harry Saltzman said Sean Connery and Albert Finney both moved better than any other actor on screen because they moved like cats.
Yeah,
and I looked at myself in this movie and thought, God, I don't move like a cat. I was like mincing across the screen.
Cats are varied. Different kind of cat.
Thank you, Ian. That's so understanding.
Yes. But Cameron scripts are just a joy to read. They are just, they are how to write action. And yes, you could say, as an example of the Hollywood movie, yes, they are maybe a bit. Everything's in the right place, but I don't mind that. Everything's in the right place, and you mostly don't notice it because you're interested in what's happening.
Yeah.
I watched Aliens, and I didn't go, oh, load lift, Chekhov's load lifter. That's going to come in later because I was swept up with the thing. I didn't think, oh my God, that's definitely going to come back. But also, like you say, it's not just, oh, what's she doing? She's pointlessly load lifting. She's doing it to illustrate character. Everything has to be, ideally, everything should be doing so many different things at once.
Yeah.
The viewer just goes, this is great. I'm enjoying this. And then when he gets, oh yeah, she can do a load lifter. Oh, well, I bet she can maybe stand a chance of fighting the Alien Queen now.
And also,
going, yay!
seeing as we're there, that scene with the power loader fighting the Alien Queen is always so impressive. And I've seen the film on many different sizes of screen, including in the cinema. You know, it's an they did that without any computer-generated imagery. You know, they had to build a full-size power loader, which was basically a costume with a man in it that Sigourney Weaver stood on. They had a massive Alien Queen full-size operated by about 12 people, 12 puppeteers. Yeah. And also they had like a lot of miniature work, a miniature version of the loader and the Queen. And they cut between all those elements. And it's just brilliant, you know.
Well, it's just, I mean, we'll sound like old men again, but this film was made in 1986, and it mostly holds up. It holds up, and it's all because there's no stupid CGI making us go, oh, that looks a bit fake in our brains.
Yeah.
You know, I just watched Thor: Love and Thunder at the cinema.
Okay, I haven't seen it. Heard it's
shit. Such a shit.
Heard it's terrible, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to go and see them with my kids, and sometimes it's literally I'm going to have a sleep now, and I actively go to sleep.
Right.
That's Thor: Love and Thunder was one of those.
Oh,
I was like, well, I'm in a comfy seat, I'm going to go to sleep because it was that boring.
Oh dear, I love the Marvel movies, but there are a couple of naff ones, but this has got such bad reviews. It's like it's the worst one ever. Kermode was ranting about how terrible it is.
Well, it's like they're taking the piss now. It's like you can see them acting. It's almost like they shouldn't have bothered putting the CGI in, because it would have been more honest if they just left the green screen in the background, because it's just so artificial.
Right.
And the performances are so surface, and just it's like a pastiche. Just everything about it. It's worth seeing just to sort of go, oh my God, see what everyone's talking about now. So
for the record, lest people feel that we're slagging off Taika Waititi, we've got a whole episode of the show from a couple of years ago where me and Kirsty and Stella went on for ages about how much we love what we do in the shadows. So we love Taika Waititi, but it does sound like
Taika Waititi. Yeah.
Oh, nice. But yeah, it does sound like there's a great deal of complacency here. I'm still a few films behind with Marvel. I hear that
I'm not a fan of them, so other people might like them more than. But this was definitely massively off subject, but this was definitely a I'll have a snooze rather than I'm quite enjoying this for what it is.
Well,
I can see what they're doing here. The performances are good. The reading of the lines good. The plot's good for what it is. You know, this was definitely I'd rather, I paid for recliners in my View cinema. I'm going to press the button and go to sleep.
Right.
Occasionally, I'd rather do that with a movie.
Wow. Famous quote: Quentin Tarantino will sell you the seat, but you're only going to use it in the recline position.
Yeah.
Dear God. Okay, well that's good. Now I know.
Anyway, the polar opposite, Aliens.
Yes.
Back to Aliens.
Now that I know not to spend £10 or whatever on Thor: Love and Thunder, let's talk more about Aliens. So,
do you know what?
Go on.
I've just realised I've never seen Aliens in the cinema.
Oh, really? Well, it gets re-released
Never
pretty
seen it,
regularly.
I know. I've just never seen it. I've seen it so many times, and I've probably never seen it on a very big screen.
It holds up beautifully, I have to say. I think you've just missed it being screened as part of Grimfest in Manchester again.
Yeah, no, I had. I was going to go try and get to it, but I couldn't. Stupid children. Then I get dragged to Thor: Love and Thunder. But yeah, but it is such an amazing film. Just there's barely anything to fault it, really. Like, and you know me, I can fault anything. There's not a, you know, it knows exactly what it is. Its tone is perfect. It looks perfect. There's no lines in it that make me go, ooh. There's not even, you know, there's not even that one line that ruins an otherwise perfect film that you sometimes get.
There is that weirdly homophobic subtext to one line of dialogue that the Marines say that I've never quite understood. You know, the bit where they're all around the breakfast table in the refectory, and they're all they're kind of talking over each other, so you can't really tell what they're saying anyway. A lot of it, but they say something about, "Have you had some Arcturian poontang?" And one of them says yes, and somebody else says, "But the one you had was male." And he says, "Doesn't matter when it's Arcturian, baby." And gee,
well,
that's a bit odd,
I can live with that because they're not, you know, maybe Colonial Marines in however far in the future aren't that PC.
Yeah, and it's just
that's exactly like a bunch of Marines talking about accidentally having ladyboys in Vietnam. Yeah. It's dodgy as fuck, but I imagine that's how that's surely in the future.
Although, funnily enough, if you listen to the commentary rather on the DVD by James Cameron, he says he realised afterwards that he'd not written the Marines properly, or rather they weren't very like Marines. He said they're more like regular army near the end of their tour. And you know, Marines would be much more disciplined. They wouldn't be joking around like that and kind of slacking off on their duties.
I think just instinctively it works anyway. So maybe he shouldn't beat himself up. I've always read it that it was a continuation of Crew Expendable. Yeah. They didn't send the fucking brightest and the best because they sent the shit Marines. They sent a platoon that had Hudson in it.
Well, this is another flaw of the film in certain people's eyes that we should probably discuss. That again, they only send 12 people. There's only 12 of them. They're set to rescue a colony. They send one ship with 12 people on it, and when the ship gets to the planet, all 12 of the people get on the drop ship and go down to the planet. Not one person remains behind to watch over things, and it's like the plotting is brilliantly.
Aren't there more than 12?
No, well, there's more than 12. There's 12 Marines plus Ripley plus Burke.
Yeah, I thought there were. I always get the impression there's more than that.
No, because
he has the brilliant. You know, again, this is sort of classic by the numbers thing of he thins out the herd at the midpoint.
Well,
he goes, "Oh dear, there's been a massive battle.
Well,
the people who's the red shirts have all been killed."
Yeah, well, that is almost a flaw I would point out. Is that I think there's only about 2 of the Marines who you don't know who they are, and that's Wierzbowski and Crow, I think. They never even have a line, but they get killed in the first flurry of action. Yeah. And they're wiped out exactly the same time that 2 of the Marines you do know, Dietrich and Frost, are also killed. So you're reeling from people that you knew, and they've also got rid of the cannon fodder, the red shirts, as you say, which is a brilliant move. And from that point, everybody is characterized. But I've always found it...
Yeah, and also because of the tone of it, you kind of don't know who's going to live and who's going to die. So there really is a, you know, I think much as I love Jurassic Park, one of its main flaws for me was, why are you showing me dinosaurs threatening children? I know you're not going to have the guts to kill them.
Right.
So it takes so much tension out of the, unless you're 10 and you haven't worked out that they're not going to kill children. It sucks so much tension out of that kitchen scene. It's almost just there for the sake of it.
I know what you mean.
Because they're not going to kill children. He only kills bad people in Jurassic Park.
But
whereas in Jaws, he kills kids on rafts and dogs and breaks all sorts of rules.
Yeah, and watching that last week, I remember that Kirsty said, she tried to watch Jaws with her daughter and they got as far as the kid being eaten off the beach. And A, that's only about 20 minutes into the film. And B, that's such a horrific scene. The way you see him from a distance, kind of in a fountain of his own blood, being dragged under the water.
I always remember, this is a very rambling story, podcast, isn't it? But I just love the story of Spielberg and I think his producer secretly watching a test screening, and watching a test screening with an audience, and when the child gets killed and there's a big fountain of blood goes spurting up, like somebody vomited in the aisle and then ran out, and then other people ran with them.
Right.
And so he was just going, "Oh my God, we used too much blood. And then everyone came back in.
Right.
None of them. They all went out to get a breath of fresh air, and then they all went back in.
Right.
Maybe we've got a hit after all.
Wonderful.
But I think with Aliens, I think one of the geniuses with Jaws is it's a family movie that really pushes it.
Yeah.
And with Aliens, you're definitely going, this is an 18. That's one reason I've never watched it at the cinema, because in '86 I was too young, and I remember, of all people, my great uncle, God rest his soul, but he was really old, and I couldn't even imagine him going to the cinema. But he came to stay with us, and he was like, "Oh, I just watched the most amusing film the other day." And I went to watch, a film called Aliens. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely loved it though. And like my weird great uncle.
Okay.
So he's literally, almost. Well, I mean, when was he born? Early 20th century.
Right.
Served in World War II.
Right.
Watching what to me still feels like an ultra modern movie.
Yeah.
And he was just like didn't know what to expect, but it's almost like a few days later he was still shocked and smiling about it.
Oh, that was wonderful.
What a remarkable, strange film. I just remember anyone who did manage to sneak in and watched it just came out so excited, but also saying, I remember a lot of people said, "Oh, it's shit, it's so stupid," but then being excited about it because it was just, "Oh, it's so violent and it's just stupid and loads of people die and it's got aliens."
Oh, you mean because they
kind of liked it, but also thought it was shit.
Right.
Also thought it was silly.
Right.
There seemed to be a reaction in the sixth form common room from some people.
You do get that attitude to it. Just going back to the child thing, do you think Aliens gets away with I mean, some people do accuse it of what you just accused Jurassic Park of, that,
with Newt, you mean?
Yeah, the tension is dissipated because Newt is always safe. Do you think that's true?
Do you know what? I don't remember ever thinking that. I think the only person you think is probably going to last to the last reel is Ripley, but generally you're not. I don't think you're thinking that anyway, because you're taken in by the movie. But I also think they kill everybody, and they kill Ripley's family and her brother. And I mean, if you think for a second, you probably think they're not going to kill Newt, are they? But because of its tone, I guess you don't ever quite know.
I also think
you could imagine it would work. You could imagine Newt being killed and then she gets in a load lifter. You could imagine that.
Yeah, true. And two things.
Then it's not get away from her, you bitch. It's I'm gonna get you for that. Bitch.
Yeah. Well, when I first saw Aliens, I'd already seen the beginning of Alien 3, so I knew that Newt lived to the end of Aliens, but then died. So it, so that didn't affect my enjoyment of Aliens at all. The other thing, though, it's notable that Newt is used a lot to set a foreboding tone. She is the one who says it won't make any difference. In the extended cut of the film, I think it's not in the theatrical bit. It must be in the extended cut only. There's the conversation she has with Ripley about Ripley's daughter, and she says, "Do you have a little girl?" And Ripley says, "Yes." And Newt says, "Where is she?" And Ripley says, "She's gone." And then there's this pause, and then Newt says, "You mean dead?" And because that character kind of carries an air of doom. I mean, her entire family have been killed, including her older brother.
I mean, I think Newt's an archetype that is in so many other survival movies. Yes. If you were watching a fort full of soldiers and there were children also in that fort, you kind of know those kids aren't going to die.
Yeah.
If you think about it for a second, but a lot of your favourite, they do enable people that you might be rooting for to die in heroic ways. So their deaths will be dramatically pleasing, and you'll still be like, no. Yeah. So having a child there means goodies can die, and we don't mind. In the same way as there's nothing worse than watching a film where people just get sort of offed in such arbitrary ways, even though obviously warfare is arbitrary. It's that balance of, you don't want to have plot armor, as they say. Like people, no bullets can hit them because I'm a hero. I've got story to do. But at the same time, we don't just want. You have to be very careful if you're just going to have someone you're rooting for to just suddenly get shot and die. You have to be aware of all these different things you're doing to the audience. And that kind of audience expectations is something we think about a lot when we're writing scripts, and that kind of brings us into genre as well. Like how much an audience, how cine literate every single audience member is, without, they might not be able to articulate it, they might not be aware of it in any way whatsoever, but just about every single human on this planet and especially the audience for a Hollywood movie knows all the rules, and they sit down with their popcorn and they know the rules, and you've got to go. That's why everybody can go, "Oh, this is so boring and predictable. I could tell that was going to happen." And at the same time, if you do something too weird, you get people standing up and walking out, throwing stuff at the screen. Like when I saw in No Country for Old Men with an audience of actual people, rather than film critics, people stormed out at the surprise twist.
Well, I haven't seen it, so don't spoil it.
Oh God, haven't you? You're really going to watch that then? That's another one I teach a lot. I rectify that because it's by far the Coen Brothers' best movie for my money. I'm not a massive Coen Brothers fan. Right. I appreciate what they do. They don't usually speak to me too much.
Okay.
But I would say No Country for Old Men, and it does something that really, I probably shouldn't say too much, but just watch it, and it really uses what the audience expects against them in such a genius way. But I've seen audiences literally leave because they felt cheated.
Right. Okay.
Because of but with Alien, it runs on rails, like it does everything by the book in terms of structure.
Yeah, that reminds me of
absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
because you still don't know what's going to happen next.
Leslie Halliwell's capsule review in Halliwell's Film Guide, I remember off by heart. It is frightening but mechanical sequel with none of the half-assed poetry of the original. Yeah, and I could sort of get what he's going at. Like you say, it does run on rails, but what rails?
What rails? Yeah. It's like, it was a bit of a predictable roller coaster. It was thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell it was going to do exactly what it did. Yeah, exactly. You know, you don't.
The fact is, when you're watching it, you can't tell exactly what it's going to do
Yeah,
because you're so swept up in it.
yeah, and you don't think about that, and that's what's wonderful about it. And every time I watch the movie, that I discover something new that I love about it. I mean, it was only a few viewings ago. Obviously, I watch this every couple of years, quite often on my birthday, as I said to Lance Henriksen when we interviewed him a couple of years ago. That's one of the few times I can clang. But you know, I love that this is in Alien as well, and it was obviously they spotted that they needed to replicate this element of Alien, but it's that the environments feel so real. I mean, there's, especially in the extended cut, there's more time spent on this. The way that they've created those complete environments, like on the Sulaco, you know, there can be the fairly mundane scenes where people are just standing around loading things, or even before they've woken up when the ship's just empty and you're just looking at the swinging chains, the camera's panning around the loading bay or the drop ship on the launch pad and all that. But it just feels like such a real and huge environment. And therefore those scenes are wonderful, even though nothing's happening, you know. And even though...
Oh, yeah, just...
And I think
the set design is just amazing.
And actually, I think a lot of the Silico is probably just matte paintings, you know. I think that the set is probably not nearly as big as it looks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so much of this is... Yeah, well, this is one of the last pre-CGI films. And you know, and after that, you know, Cameron himself moves us into with Terminator 2, which again is I'd say Terminator 2 and Aliens are two of the they're kind of equally tied as the most exciting films.
I love Terminator 2 as well. I don't think it's as exciting as the Terminator actually, although T2 has got a hugeness to it that the original doesn't have, and you know,
all three of those films I could literally watch, and I have watch over and over again, and they all have something. You know, completely compelling about them.
Yeah,
I think over time I've come to think actually Aliens is the most perfect of the three of them. I remember watching Terminator 2 at the cinema exactly the right age. I'd literally watched Terminator the day before. I'd never seen it with my teenage mates.
Right.
You know, like 18, 19. I was 19, and I'd never quite got around to watching Terminator. And we watched it the day before I went to see the sequel.
Right. Oh,
and it was like watching like the best wrestling match or something I'd ever seen. It was literally a massive crowd of us with loads of other people, all just absolutely cheering and loving every second. People completely primed for that movie. It was a brilliant cinema going experience that was. But Aliens I would say is even better. I would say.
I love all those three movies, and it's not just because Aliens is my favourite movie, but yeah, I think maybe the excitement is sustained best in Aliens. Terminator, and especially Terminator 2, both have longers in them. Not very long ones, not very serious ones, but they do slow down and pause for breath. Aliens doesn't really, although at the same time, it's not paced to be relentlessly action-packed like a lot of movies are now, where you just get tired out and exhausted. It does have amazing quiet scenes in between the action. I mean, I think it's our friend Ross who said that Aliens has one of the best middles of any film, and the middle is just they're sealed into the medical centre in the colony base, and they're hoping the aliens won't come and find them. That's it. But it does have... Every scene is amazing, including that brilliant scene, which I was thinking of as maybe supporting my idea that it's a horror film more than an action film, because I'm not sure you could call it an action scene. But the scene in the med
And
lab
the face huggers.
with the face huggers, it's just horrendous. And
I think that's that's whenever I watch that with other people, that's the bit, and that is definitely a horror sequence, and I think it's even more effective because it's a change of pace.
Yeah,
and suddenly people who are like, "Oh, this is a fun popcorn movie. I'm a bit tense, but I'm not scared," are suddenly really uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's got the sort of Freudian Geiger, you're being attacked by a vagina with legs, sort of.
Yeah, and it's also
stick a tube down your throat. What?
And the relatable mythic thing of the child hiding under the bed. Although that's a reversal, of course. The monster's not under the bed. She hides under the bed in case the monster comes, which is like a brilliant way of saying it's even worse than you feared. You will be hiding under the bed. And then they wake up and find that the monster is in the room with them, which is.
But it's also a brilliant. Again, another reason this is so good. It's not just, oh, these things have got in.
Yeah.
And that's quite a fun sequence. It ramps up the drama. It's, oh, we've got a traitor amongst us. You know. So the reason they're there is because Burke, you can't trust. And that speaks to the whole, one of the main themes of the whole Alien franchise is corporate greed is the ultimate sin. And so having set up a movie which seems to be about the siege mentality, we've got to keep them out, then a new danger comes from within, which makes it a brilliant kind of middle turning point. I love that whole bit so much, even though there is a slight plot hole there that again, this is the kind of movie that you can watch 20 times and you're always seeing new great things that you've never noticed. Now and again you do spot a flaw which hadn't occurred before, and I think it's when they're talking to Bishop when he's on the radio tower, and he says something like, "I'm going to be there in 2 minutes." And that scene was clearly meant to happen a lot later because it takes him a lot longer to get there. But they've put it in that scene so that you can see them talking and Burke's in the foreground, I think, because it makes him look really sinister, and it kind of sets up that he's watching them and that he's got his own agenda. Yeah. But it, I just... It does say so much that you can just watch this film again and again, and the little cracks do appear, but they're so tiny. Well, they're plenty. They're plenty forgivable.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know.
There's not a. I mean, we haven't really discussed the sort of extended version versus the theatrical release.
No, we haven't.
It's almost like the theatrical release has been washed away. But there are some people who really do say the theatrical release is better
for understandable reasons. What do you think?
I can't. I'd missed too much of the stuff from the extended release. I think I could live without the drone, the automatic guns. But I think cutting out Ripley having a daughter, despite what I was saying before, that's. I mean, I could see why James Cameron was pissed off. They went, so we're going to take out the daughter. Won't affect too much, will it? The entire film's about motherhood. And what's Newt then when she meets Newt? What's Newt when she meets Newt? Just a kid. You bastards. It makes the. I mean. It makes his whole reason for setting the whole thing up, the theme of the movie is motherhood, and you take out the mother. So it's not two mothers against another mother.
It wasn't quite studio mandated. The studio said you've got to lose half an hour, but they left it up to Cameron and Hurd to choose which bits to cut, and they chose to get rid of the whole colony sequence because that was just unnecessary setup, It's a great scene, but I can see why they got rid of it. And then I think they reluctantly decided that, you know what, maybe it is slightly clunky that we've set up that Ripley's lost a daughter, so then she finds a new one. Maybe it's better if she just develops a maternal instinct because she meets this child and it's still a happy ending. And I think Cameron convinced himself of that, and that's why they did it. But then over the years he went back to thinking, no, actually, you know what, we always wanted it to be about she'd lost a daughter, so she gains a daughter, so let's put that back. And that's why.
And again, I think the world building of it is brilliant. I mean, especially at the time, it's, you know, because it's 1986, so cryogenic stuff isn't, you know, hasn't been in a million things then. The idea of her being asleep and missing her daughter's life it's not just I've got back to Earth, oh no, she's been killed in a car crash. It's not, it comes out of the world as well. It comes out of the sci-fi world. It's a bit of a head fuck that appeals to the geeky sci-fi in me, and she's been in space so long she's missed her daughter growing up.
And it's also
the picture of her daughter as an old woman is brilliant,
which is Sigourney Weaver's actual mother.
Oh wow!
In the picture, yeah. And also it makes the start of the film stronger because it starts on that emotional note. You know, my sister Maureen, who I've often mentioned on this podcast, I tried to get her to watch Aliens with me once. She wasn't too into it, but she was very moved by that start. The fact that was at the start of the film. The first half an hour of the film is really about Ripley just sitting there thinking, "Shit, I don't have a family anymore." And Maureen didn't have children, so it's not like you have to be a parent to feel. No.
And again, it just reminds me again of why Alien 3 makes me so angry, so disrespectful. It's just so disrespectful.
Well,
it's you're carrying on somewhat. You know, obviously it's Ridley's, then it's Cameron's, and they're different, but Aliens is respectful. I mean, I guess some people would disagree, but the third one is literally like, we don't give a two shits about what's gone before. We're just us making a film. We're just making a film. We do not give a shit. What's gone before. And do you know what? I'm just gonna kill these people you've been rooting for in the beginning of the film.
Well,
and
it
makes me. It's just awful.
In the making of documentary of Alien 3, the producer David Giler, who did produce Aliens and Alien, you know, he was with it all the time, and they obviously say to him, "Why did you decide to kill Hicks and Newt?" And he thinks about it, and he just says, "Well, we just thought it was a stronger image to just have Sigourney coming back rather than Sigourney and some other people." And I could. It's like, that's such a producer's decision. I can see that. I know what
you say. It's a producer's decision, but it's also, have you never sat with a bunch of people watching these movies?
Yeah.
And how much they'd be like, "Yay!
Yeah.
Here's Hicks. Here's Sigourney. Here's Newt. Yay!" And then you could kill Newt.
Yeah.
You imagine if you kill Newt after, but not in a. Yeah, we couldn't be bothered to get the actor or do anything, and she drowned in her hab pod after escaping. I mean, I've heard people defend it, saying it's brilliant because it's complete disrespect for the audience. Goes, this is a horror film again. So that's the. We're straying into talking about Alien 3 now. So this is probably what we said in our pod on Alien 3.
Yeah,
but that Alien, it's almost like the people that were a bit pissed off that they turned it into a dumb 80s action movie.
Yeah.
We're kind of like, oh, it's a creepy, horrible movie now, and I've killed the cute kid and the brave Marine because it's a horror movie and good people die in horror movies. But anyway, we're straying into Alien 3.
Yes, we'll direct out.
But I still think Aliens builds so well on the horror movie Alien that it was just, it's almost like, aren't producers supposed to make things more populist, not less?
Yeah.
Like, surely the thing to do next would go, You thought Aliens was big, it's going to be Aliens-er. It's going to be Earth War. It's going to be huge. You won't be able to believe how great this film's going to be. We fucking aliens everywhere. That's what the next film should be. It just seems obvious to me.
Well,
you have a house, you have a bunch of people surrounded by zombies in one house, then you have the whole planet covered in zombies. And then, it's Day of the Aliens would have been.
Well, yeah,
maybe one day.
I would have wanted to say something like that. I've got my doubts as well. I'll direct our listener to go back to listen to our Alien 3 episode where we get into depth on this. I'll sum up my thoughts as I did in that episode by just saying I think Alien 3 is a pretty good film on its own terms. And as far as a sequel to this one, well, I just pretend it doesn't exist. This is the last Alien film. Because it's a perfect ending, and I get your feeling that they could have gone on and told a bigger story, but I think that the ending of this film is so satisfying that I'll just pretend that there were nothing else.
I'm kind of intrigued by the TV series that's coming out.
Well, I'm intrigued by it because Noah Hawley's a very good writer, but it's not set in the far future. And no one has ever done a good Alien thing set in near present day.
Well, there's only been one, and that was one of the worst films ever made. AVP.
I feel like there's more than one. The two AVP films, and maybe that's it. I'm sure I feel like there's another one, but maybe it's a comic or something. But anyway,
maybe.
The point is, I think the kind of mysterious far future-ness of it is essential. I don't even like that in the Prometheus films they started dating the movies so that you know exactly when. I can't remember the year that Prometheus is set, but it's meant to be 10 years before Alien, I think. So you can extrapolate all the dates.
Or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite near.
Typically Ridley Scott. When should we set this? When should we set Blade Runner? Tomorrow? It's far enough in the future to me.
That won't have any consequences whatsoever. I like the idea. I always thought there were hundreds and hundreds of years hence that maybe civilizations have fallen and risen again, and therefore any minor anachronisms like technology not looking futuristic enough didn't really matter.
I guess in my head, I agree. I like the fact that they didn't go, this is definitely, you don't need to know. But I always thought they're probably about 25th century.
Yeah. At least
we've still got the same structures we've got now. Capitalism's won big time. We've just about still got countries. And it's a sort of, but I guess that's the sort of cyberpunk future, isn't it? Cyberpunk is traditionally, all the bad shit from our own time is in the ascendancy and there's not very much of the good stuff left. That's sort of William Gibson kind of, his stuff was always in the 22nd century, I think, or late 21st.
That makes sense.
In my head, it was always a few hundred years ahead but I always liked the lack of, it's weird. I love Aliens and so many good bits, but one of my favourite bits in it is near the beginning, and it's her debriefing.
Yeah.
Just the world building of that and the dialogue and the performance from that woman smoking.
Yeah.
And just, when she goes and it just sort of, I can't remember the exact words, but it's just like, and these are your words, had acid for blood.
Yeah.
When she starts going on about and yet, unlike any life form recorded on any 400 worlds, and it kind of just in a natural way, it's an exposition dump of the and it's but what I like is that, and this is another reason to hate Ridley Scott's prequels. It goes, we have Marines going, is this going to be another bug hunt? So it makes you go, there are aliens out there, but they tend to be, they're few and far between, and they tend to be primitive, if at all. And then I guess we've got the space jockeys, but they are this mysterious ancient race that we don't know anything about. And then what does he do? He goes and has them wandering around. Yeah, and then even worse, he makes them go and plop themselves into the river on Earth or some shit. I don't know, because he thinks it's 1975 and he's just read Chariots of the Gods. It's just awful. Awful. But that was another thing that I loved about Alien and Aliens was the world building of this is a kind of real future where mostly outer space is what we know outer space is like. It's rocks and poisonous planets, and they just extrapolate and go, there is a bit of life, but it's not fucking Star Trek. There's not a sentient being in every solar system, which just looks, I mean, Star Trek looks more and more just like it might as well be Lord of the Rings. The more we find out about the universe, more Star Trek seems more and more I mean, God love it, but more and more fantastical. And Aliens is a much more, do you know what? Let's go and mine out into the universe, because if we meet aliens, we'll deal with that when we find them, because we're not going to, are we? We're not going to aliens. We'll be lucky to find a bacteria on a planet. So let's just assume we're by ourselves in the sentient race business. And I've always liked that about Aliens.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful universe because it lacks that Star Trek style sense of wonder and diversity and hope. It's just but it's credible as well.
It's very post Watergate. A hope of the 60s, then Watergate.
Do you know the movie Outland with Sean Connery?
Yeah, well, a long time ago.
I've not seen it for decades. People are now saying, is it probably set in the same universe as the Alien films? Because it was made around the same time in probably the same studios with the same set designers and the same music, and it just has that, and it has that same kind of, the universe is crap, it's all run by money, it's all the corporations. I think the villain in it might even be just called the Company again.
No, I've not seen it enough to be able to comment, but I mean, obviously what Alien came out of was Dark Star, wasn't it?
Yes.
They kind of did Dark Star, and then went, let's have another go round of that and change the tone.
Yeah,
because that was fun, but actually, what we need is the engine of a monster movie. Yeah, and then instead of a kind of hippies in space, which was nice tonally, but you don't need to necessarily watch it all, because I couldn't tell you what happens in Dark Star, other than there's a ball alien.
No, I haven't seen all of it, and John Carpenter is my favourite director. But but God bless Dan O'Bannon, because he did one thing that was quite good and was able to spin it into something really damn good. And that's twice as much as most artists achieve. So, God bless him. We've only got a few minutes left, Ian. So, is there anything else you'd like to say about Aliens to finish up?
Well, I don't know really, other than it's still one of my favourite films. And you sometimes think your tastes are going to change as you go through time, but it's just still up there and always is up there. And now I'm 50, I assume it's probably going to be always up there.
Ah, good. Oh, I need to ask you, you mentioned on Twitter that you're going to try and revisit the Star Trek films, which you're not a huge fan of. I just wondered if you'd started that yet.
I haven't started that yet because there's so many things to watch, and I'm watching new Trek rather than having time to go back to the old Trek.
Well, when you watch Star Trek 2 and 3, by the way, is my favourite, I think. Those were made before Aliens, and they both have music by James Horner, and you can definitely you can hear him limbering up Aliens.
I don't remember ever saying I really hated them. I just don't think I've massively watched them. My appreciation of Star Trek is definitely something that's different from when I was younger.
Right.
I think I like it a lot more as I've got older.
Oh, that's cool.
Maybe Star Trek is a bit embarrassing when you're a cool teenager.
It certainly is. Having not been a cool teenager, I can still be pretty sure of that.
Like, nobody dies. It's like about emotions and shit and hope. Ugh. And now I'm a bit like, God, the future. My children are growing into it, and it's going to be more like Aliens.
Oh God, no! Oh dear.
Yeah.
So,
But the opposite sides of sci-fi futures.
yeah, and you know what? I like the fact that Star Trek shows that it's possible to still dream in a positive way, even though the more modern Treks are much grittier and darker. You know, it still has a kernel of that belief in a better future for all, and that is something that I find
They still rub up against the fact, as Aliens' anti-capitalist message does. It made millions at the box office. This anti-capitalist message, brilliant. Star Trek, the Star Trek timeline, still very much, it's all the latest stuff. You can, with Picard when they're in 2024, and you can tell this system is about to collapse.
Yes.
And then when they had Enterprise, I remember watching that and going, "Oh, this is exciting! Are we gonna find out what happens when they give up money?" No, he's going to go to the year 3000, and we're going to miss that bit out.
Right.
But
they've always been.
So it has some very, very, very anti-American ideas. And it's. But anyway, we are talking about Star Trek now.
I was going to make one final point about Aliens, and it's gone out of my head. Do you need to have a word with someone? Oh, you've gone quiet, Ian.
Sorry, I'm muted. You're going to have to edit this bit anyway, aren't you?
Yep.
You're right, Elliot. We're just literally nearly finished. Are you just giving me that back? Or you want it stapled? Just wait till we're finished here and then I'll staple it.
No, I remember you said I don't know how many years, but you said, like, I don't know how many years after, the last of the Rise of Skywalker.
After Rise of Skywalker, how many years? What?
So 30 years after that.
30 years after the Rise of Skywalker? Is that... Well, they've never made that film.
I know.
So you want to write a story?
Rise of Skywalker, it is Return of Mace Windu. Then it is Rise of Moff Gideon. Then it's Return of the Jedi Death.
I love all those titles, Elliot. I've got to say.
And then
Mace Windu is going to be very old, 30 years after Rise of Skywalker.
Actually, he doesn't grow. He doesn't grow from 28.
He's been obsessed with Mace Windu.
And then we have Revenge of Moff Gideon.
Yes.
That's 30 years.
Right.
Well, Moff Gideon is cool, so I'd like to see him. And I'm sure
maybe we should keep this on the podcast because it's quite cute. This is my child writing the next 3 Star Wars films, aren't you?
Yeah.
Ray's Adventures continue. Mace Windu appears.
Wow.
And he's still 28.
And he's still young.
Well,
yeah,
that makes
sense. And he was only a Jedi trainer when he was 15.
Right, I see. Anyway, Elliot, let us wrap up our podcast.
Yes, we shall.
I can't wait to show you Aliens. He's only 6.
You're going to love it.
But in about 4 years, you'll be about the right age to watch Aliens. So that's another thing. Having children, you mustn't wait too long to show them the old films because you think they're a classic, but if they're 15 when they're watching them, it's shit.
Yeah.
So to show them when they're 10, then Aliens is the most perfect film ever made.
That's very wise advice.
Yeah, that's what I've done with the other 2.
Everybody's listening. So
between 10 and 11, 12 is the best time to show them aliens an alien.
Right, okay.
To shit their pants.
So noted. Beautiful.
Anyway.
So my final point on Aliens then, seeing as you mentioned an anti-capitalist movie made by a massive corporation, and it obviously made a huge amount of money at the box office. Do you know what movie knocked Aliens off the top spot in the box office of 1986?
And it was an anti-capitalist movie. Was it Wall Street then or something? Or
no, I'm not really thinking along those lines. It's just a really unlikely movie that I imagine knocking a feel-good, crowd-pleasing film like Aliens off the top spot. Any guess?
86. That's the thing. That period, I wasn't really going to the cinema much. 86. What was going on in 86? God, was it like Pretty in Pink or something? Or
no, it wasn't depressing like that. It's a good film, but it's just a weird choice.
Pretty in Pink's a good film. Damn you.
I have no knowledge, honestly.
It's a brilliant film.
It was David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Oh.
Bye, Elliot.
And that I did see at the cinema, actually.
Don't forget to finish Mace Windu.
Yeah.
You saw... Well, you said you were too young to see Aliens, but you were old enough to see The Fly. They were
Was it 15? I think maybe
I think they were 8. They were both 18s.
Yeah. I think maybe I just went to see that with my dad.
Right. Wow.
It's not like my parents were like, you're not allowed to go and see it. It's just you couldn't go by yourself.
Right, okay.
Watch 18s because you'd get added, as the Americans would say.
I can't imagine seeing that film at the cinema. And I'm sure we'll talk about that on another episode because it's another film that I always return to. But this has been a wonderful chat, Ian.
It is. And should we say goodbye, Elliot?
Bye.
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 Bye, Elliot. And say bye-bye to the listener.
I don't know what. So, Elliot, this is a horror podcast. Could you pretend to be a possessed child? Scariest child ever.
I am quite scared just looking at those chilling eyes. That works. That's wonderful. You know your horror, Elliot.
Inside you. How would a demon talk?
I am Demon Son.
Oh my dear God. There goes my bone marrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely staying in the podcast, Ian. Definitely.
Yeah, just there's evidence for social services.
I am Demon Son.
He's now created a character that you could put into a script.
Demon Son.
That should be a movie. Demon Son.
There we go.
Demon Son.
Perfectly. That sounded appropriately 80s as well.
There should be a new Marvel movie. There should be a new Marvel movie.
I think you're just going to have to fade this one out, Dan.
I think I'll take that cue. So, thanks, Ian.
Goodbye.
Well, bye, everybody. What a wonderful
listeners.
time. Bye.
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts. Produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited. Presented by Ian Winterton, T.D. Velasquez,
and Demon Son.
Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com, for more content and contact details. or visit our Facebook pages at AndNowPod or at Lee Cushing Pod. Follow us on Twitter at AndNowPodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/AndNowPodcast. And now the podcast stops.